Hey, 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 welcome to another episode of Grieving Voices. If you've been here a while, thank you for coming back. If this is your first episode, welcome. Today, my guest is Kenisha Nichelle. She is a trailblazer in the sports industry and a passionate advocate for those navigating grief. Having overcome profound personal losses, including the deaths of her father and mother, Kenisha has turned her pain into purpose. She has made significant contributions to organizations like the Miami Dolphins and the Super Bowl Committee, and she founded the Brighter Tomorrow Foundation Incorporated, which provides innovative resources for individuals dealing with grief. Kenisha is also the creator of Game Changers United, a platform designed to support athletes in overcoming life's challenges. Her work is characterized by authenticity, resilience, and a deep commitment to helping others find hope and healing. Kenisha's mission is to inspire and empower individuals to live and not merely survive. Thank you so much for being here. And I
Absolutely.
think
I'm
we're of the
grateful.
same mindset. So you are in the perfect place
Thank you.
to
Thank
be a
you.
guest. So thank you for what you're about to share. And I'm happy to meet you.
Likewise, I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share. So thank you, Victoria, for having me.
So I was looking through your website and things, and I was a child griever. My father passed when I was 8, and I read that your father had passed when you were 12, unexpectedly.
Yes.
Um, and one thing I found interesting in reading was that color therapy was introduced to you. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I dug further, and it's that you've incorporated that into the Brighter Tomorrow Foundation. Um, and we'll get to all of that because I want you to talk about all of that. But first, it's what led you to where you are today are those losses and transforming your pain into purpose, which is another conversation I want to get into as well. Put a pin in that. But please share with me and our listeners the impact of being a child griever and growing up with it, really, because that's
Yeah.
what we do as child grievers, which is very different when you lose a parent as an
Mm,
adult, right?
right. Yes, so it was unexpected. My father was a police officer, and so he was at a routine training. They were in the classroom, they weren't out in the field. And he was just, in the classroom, and we got told that he came back from lunch and just collapsed to the floor. I was in school, and so my mother came and got me from school and pulled me out and said, your father is being rushed to the hospital. We have to go. So we went. Somehow, I don't know the timing, but somehow we beat them there, or we got there like right at the same time, because I can remember seeing him come out of the ambulance and being, brought into the emergency room. Um, as they were working on him and things, we later found out that it was a brain aneurysm. Um, he had, so the story that I've been told was that as a child, he was swimming and dove head first into the pool one time, and it left a permanent cut on his head. So we don't know if that had something to do with, like, it was just there and lo and behold it ruptured, but it was a brain aneurysm, and so that was on a Wednesday. By Saturday he was declared brain dead. um and so that's literally unexpected. Like, we didn't know. My parents were divorced, so when my parents divorced, I opted to live with my father because I was a daddy's girl. Seems unconventional. Most daughters go with their moms, but my dad and I had a really good relationship. So, that was my world. That's where I live. That was everything. He had, since remarried at the time, but it was my world, and it tore me to shreds. I had lost my great grandmother before then, but that's the only death that I had experienced at that age. And so, yeah, at 12, shook my world upside down. And, I tried to, well, I didn't try, I did. I went back to school and, would do things in his honor, but it was tough. It was tough because I'm like, okay, what happens now? I have a mom, but I'm living with my stepmother, so that kind of got a little dicey a little bit. And then, courts got involved and all those kind of things, and it weighed on me. Like, the stress weighed on me, to the point to where I started to cut myself because I just didn't know how to process pain. This is 1999. Mental health is not even a thing then. So, and it was with a butter knife. It was something trivial, but, it was still, I was lashing out. I was, trying to do something to amass the pain. And my family, they eventually sought therapy, and they put me in a children's grief counseling class, and I think we probably went once a week or so. And it was there where I was introduced to coloring and art therapy. That it's a therapeutic tool. It's not meant to take away any pain or anything like that, but it is a safe outlet for you to reprogram your mind and to get your mind off of what it's going through, like, all the processing and all the questions and all the what if. In this particular moment, you have the opportunity to just be. And it's obviously makes sense for a child, to do it, but I encourage adults to do it as well, because I always say you have got to get that pain out somehow, because just like a balloon, it will fill up and fill up and fill up until it bursts, and you don't know what that thing is going to be that will make you burst, right? So you have to process your thoughts and feelings in some sort of way. And so I just, went back to that technique, because fast forward, when I lost my mother, it came back up into my life again.
And how was that experience different? I mean, being 12, preteen, like middle school, that is
Yeah,
a tough
seventh
time
grade.
anyway.
Yeah.
And then in college,
Hmm.
losing your mother. So very pivotal
Yeah.
times in your life. How did that
Yeah,
experience?
and I'm an only child, so it's not like I had a brother or sister that we could kind of cling to each other to go through this. It was just me. So that was equally as tough. I won't say unexpected, but it was breast cancer and kind of showed up out of nowhere. And it was stage 3, so it was pretty aggressive when she found it. I will say, in my personal opinion, she opted to have a lumpectomy, just the removal of the tumor, versus having a mastectomy. I think that is the difference between her not being here today, or at least having a few more years, but that's just me. But like I said, they were divorced, so I understand her reasons now as a grown woman. She didn't want to go through that. But it was a lot too, because again, yes, I was a sophomore in college when she was first diagnosed. And so here I am. I went to school about an hour away from our hometown. And I did that because, I wanted the freedom of being away, but also the security of being close. I didn't know when I went to school that that was going to really be a thing that played a role in my life, but it did. And so it did, yeah, it allowed me to be able to get back home for appointments and chemo and just be there as a support. But in this game called balance, something else suffered. And what suffered was my classes, right? I wasn't either going to classes, or I was failing because I wasn't studying. So that became a lot to handle and to manage. And it didn't take long. She had it. She went into remission. We took a trip to New York. It was Christmas, well, no, Thanksgiving of 2006. And she had never been, and we wanted to go. So we went to New York, and she started having really, really bad headaches on the plane. We got back, she got tested, found out that the cancer had metastasized to her brain. And so we had to go through that. It was a long haul. And then that was January. And I would say by late May, June, it had then metastasized again to her lungs, to where it was pretty much throughout the body. And so she passed July 13th of 2007. Yeah. I know.
Um, I had a thought and it just escaped my brain. So after your father passed and you moved in with your mother, yes?
I did. Yeah, I eventually did. It just didn't seem right to stay with my stepmom. So I did. I moved in with my mom.
Did that improve? I mean, you improved your relationship with your mom so that by the time you
Um,
went to college, you were
Yeah, it did. We had a strained relationship prior to. Again, I was a daddy's girl, so I opted to live with him. She didn't understand it, but then, she got on board with it. But, she went to live in her life. She started dating other people and things, and so there were become times where those men, if you will, got put before me. And so that kind of strained our relationship. So when he passed and I, finally made the decision to live with her, I had a very adult conversation. At hindsight's 2020, I probably like if my daughter was to do this to me, I'd be upset. But I had a very adult conversation where I said, "No, mom, I'm gonna come live with you, but you can't have a boyfriend while I'm here. Now, when I leave for college, you can do whatever you want, but while I'm here, you can't." And let's just say I was 15 saying this, and that's wild to me now. But I did, I didn't know any better, and honestly, she listened.
She
Listen,
honored your wishes, huh?
right. Unless she had a boyfriend that I didn't know about, she did a really good job of, keeping it hush, but I didn't know. So to me, there wasn't anybody in the picture. So that helped our relationship, that, put us back on track, if you will. And so, yeah, we became, good mother and daughter. Obviously, when I became an adult, 18, friends, if you will, still my mom, of course. But yes, our relationship improved, and then even when I got off to college and things, I was always there for her before the cancer. Just always doing things and taking her to lunch and things like that. So yes, it our relationship improved, and then that happened, and so that put me full force to want to be there as much as I can, or
And
as I
it
could.
also changed your trajectory in college as well, did it not a little bit?
It did. It did. So I originally went to school because I wanted to be a doctor. I love to help, I love medicine. So I just knew I was going to be a pediatrician, right? Just kind of the go-to thing. I got into my first class and it was horrible. I was like, nope, I can't do this. All the ions and neurons and all of the things with chemistry, and I was like, no, this is not it. But I love sports. And so just watching football games, seeing the players get injured and the people run into the field, I began to question, who are they? And
Mm.
so I found out those were athletic trainers. And I was like, oh, that's cool because it's still kind of medicine ish a little bit, but it's in sports. So that seems like fun. So I changed my major to athletic training. And then I ended up getting an opportunity to be a student athletic trainer at my school, University of Kentucky. And so that was fun. Like, I got assigned to the track and field team. So I got to, travel with them and be at practice. So I had basically the same schedule as an athlete, still maintaining full class loads and trying to, have a social life. And that's when I got the call that my mother was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
It was actually pretty terrible how I found out. So I was at home just, relaxing, whatever, and I got a phone call from a church member. And the church member was like, hey, Kenisha, I just want to let you know that I'm praying for you and your mom. Everything is going to be okay. You guys are going to make it. She's going to be fine. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And all I hear was, oh my God, you don't know.
Mm.
And so we'll say this was Wednesday, like a Wednesday night Bible study or something like that. My mom had told them, but she knew I was coming home for the weekend. So
Mm.
she was waiting until I got home because she didn't want me to be frantic and get on the highway. Everything that she didn't want me to do, I did. Because when that phone call was over, the next call, mother, what are
Mm.
these people talking about? And so she was like, yeah, I didn't want to tell you over the phone. I knew you were coming home this weekend, so I was going to tell you when I saw you. Okay, girl, I'll see you in an hour.
Mm.
And I drove home. She's like, no, don't do it. Bye, because you can't stop me.
Mhm.
So I went home and loved on her. And I think, like I said, I think that was like a Wednesday if I had to guess. So Bump classes Thursday and Friday, didn't care, I was gone. So that's how I found out. Pretty awful. But I was there, full force. But like I said, I started failing classes because I wanted to be there. And my grandmother was obviously taking care of her mom, and she had siblings and family and, friends that were there. But it's still, I felt responsible as her daughter. So I would begin to fail classes and not go and, struggle and all of those kind of things. So that fast forward when she did pass away, and I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me about what happened after that, so I'll skip it.
Mhm.
But I then long term knew that I needed my support system, so I ended up transferring to the school in my hometown so I could be close to my support system because after an incident, I realized that just an hour was too far. And so I ended up changing my major because they told me I needed 3 years to if I wanted to stay being a trainer, I would need 3 years to undo all of my grades. And I'm like, I don't have 3 years. So I ended up switching to sports administration. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
Which turned out to be a blessing in disguise too.
It did. It did. There's a little piece of me that still,
Mhm.
misses that. My daughter is starting to play basketball now, and so she's kind of pulled me out of retirement. I'll do massages, and I'm like, okay, do I need to tape your ankle and all that kind of stuff? So I'll, still kind of practice every now and again. Um, and I had big hopes and dreams of what that would look like, but hindsight's always 2020. And yes, and it's weird, I'm sure you can relate, had certain things not happened, we wouldn't be here. And I honestly believe, like, had I not lost my mother, I probably wouldn't even have my daughter because I would have never ended up in Miami. And so I can trace my life all the way back to that moment. So if it had worked out, I have no idea what now would even look like because I probably wouldn't even be in Miami, honestly.
I'm getting full body chills.
Oh,
That's just that sounds like
yeah,
truth to me. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm seeing behind you, if people just listening to this,
Oh,
they can't see the screen, but where there is hope, there is faith, and where there is faith, miracles happen. And just, and you really do weave in your Christian faith and belief system into the work that you do, into the
yeah,
foundation and all of that. And so at any point, because I can imagine, I mean, I know what losing my father and things that happened after that did to me, and it really made me hate God for a long time.
I did. I did.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
struggled for a while,
I
yeah.
did. I did. Because I didn't understand why. Like, I'm 21. I've accomplished nothing. The only thing I have is a high school diploma. So what am I still going to school for? What am I even trying for? I have no clue what to do. I think I figured out my life's career in this athletic training, but I didn't fail classes. So that's not going to work. So yeah, I was very upset. And I was, I grew up in the church, loved God, sang in the choir, taught Sunday school, did all of the things. And so immediately, it didn't hit immediately. I think I probably went to church, right after she passed. And of course, the funeral was at my church and things. But slowly but surely, I started to break down. I started to, why me, of course, and then just why, why I didn't ask for this. I don't think I've done anything wrong, all of those type of questions. And so while those questions are filtering and while, I'm slowly but surely disconnecting myself from God is when I would say my breaking point happened. And so, like I said, I was a athletic trainer. When I returned to school in the fall, I was then assigned to the women's basketball team. And I was really looking forward to that. I'm like, okay, because if you know anything about men's basketball, Kentucky it's the Mecca. And so to be part of the women's team and be kind of in the same space, it was cool, right? And so I was excited about it. And I would smile during the day and I would still, just boohoo cry at night because grief tends to hit the worst at night. But it was Labor Day weekend and I wanted to go home and see my family. And because again, I'd been to school probably about a month at this point. So I'm like, okay, it's a long weekend. I can go home. I can get a home cooked meal. I can get loved on, and I'll be good. And my supervisor told me I couldn't go home. And that's that pin that burst my bubble. And again, like I said, all those other feelings that I was having about life in general was
Mm.
all festering inside. And then to be told I couldn't go home for a reason that I don't understand. She didn't even have a reason. We weren't in season, which would have made sense. Like this is, the 1st of September. What are we doing? And that was the last day that I was a trainer. I took my keys off my keyring and I put it on the table and I said, I quit. I will not be doing this anymore. And I walked out. I went to my apartment in Lexington, changed my clothes, got in my car, drove to Louisville. I stopped at the drugstore and picked up some pills. I went to the liquor store and got some alcohol. And then I went to my aunt's house because that's where I would crash when I would come home for the weekend. And I consumed them both. I got in the bed and I said, I hope I never wake up,
Mm.
because I was like, I can't do this. I've got nothing else to give. I texted my boyfriend at the time and said, I love you, but I can't do this. And I cut off my phone. And that was my breaking point. But I'm still here and I'm grateful and thankful. And it was because of that that I didn't realize, okay, that there is a God. Because even though I was feeling those things and I was angry and I wasn't praying and I wasn't doing all of the things, he still found a way to save me. Because he didn't have to. It could have been the end. And so that landed me in a mental hospital for 4 days. It was it was a terrible experience, but it was what I needed. It was scary. Ooh, it was rough, but I needed that. I needed to see that yes, life is pretty horrible right now for you, but there is somebody else who has it worse. I was not being beat up. I had not been raped. I had not been beaten and left. That was my roommate's story actually. And so I wasn't that. Even though this was bad, it wasn't that. And so, I believe that, God allowed me to see those things, and it's unfortunate for them. Again, I'm not, passing any judgment or anything at all, but he allowed me to see that there's other people that are going through other things that you're not. So let's be grateful and thankful. You still have a family. They found you, they brought you here. They want to make sure you're taken care of. So I had to find some sort of thankfulness in that, just a little bitty piece.
Mhm.
And that is what started me on the path of kind of rebuilding my hope and trust and faith. Yeah.
Wow. So you changed your major again, right? That's when you
Yeah. So
changed.
after that stay is when I realized I was like, okay, I can't do this. I can't stay. I need to transfer. When I, did all my paperwork, talked to the advisors, I wanted to stay with athletic training, which was kinesiology and exercise science. But that's when they told me, well, you can, but you're going to need 3 years to make up everything that you've, failed. And I was like, I don't have 3 years. I'm going to end up quitting and probably living a life that would not be pleasing to my parents. So what else can I do? And that's when they suggested sports administration. They say, well, you have enough credits on this side, to transfer over to where we can get you out in a year and a half. And I was like, okay, I can do that.
And here you are.
And here I am. Yes, that year and a half called for an internship. And most students, they do it in Louisville, they'll do it at the university somewhere close by, but I took it as a unique opportunity to spread my wings and to see what was out there. And so long story short, I ended up getting my internship with the Orange Bowl committee, which is in Miami. And I think that was driven by the universe, because in Kentucky, like this time of year, it's cold, the sun never comes out, it's seasonal depression, it's ugly, it's all of the things on top of grief. And I was just like, I that was the reason why I needed to go. I was like, I need to go somewhere else where it's not this. And lo and behold, I ended up in the sunniest place in all of the United States. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to go. Never been to Miami, never been for spring break, didn't know anything about it more than what I saw on TV. But I decided to bet on myself and just to see what would happen. And it was because of that how I'm doing the things that I get to do today.
And where do you live now?
I'm in Miami.
Yeah?
I'm still in
Never left.
Miami.
Never left the sunshine, huh?
We left, so I got down the line, got married, and we spent a couple of years in Atlanta. So from 2015 to 2018, we did leave Miami and go to Atlanta. At the time, my grandmother, my father's mother, who I was really, really close to, her health was starting to fail. And so it was beginning to get a lot to travel from Miami to Kentucky. And so, and then things were happening in my career. I was like, okay, I can afford to, get a change of scenery, change of environment. So going back to Kentucky was not an option, but I wanted to get close enough to where I could at least drive, if I couldn't catch a quick flight. And so we ended up going to Atlanta for those 3 years. And I feel like it served its purpose, allowed me to see her more. But then, of course, she passed away. And so when she passed, and my husband got another opportunity back here in Miami, that brought us back in 2018. And so been here ever since.
And I read that you started Brighter Tomorrow Foundation during the pandemic.
I did. I did. So again, sports, everything is shut down. I had just gotten a new job working for, we'll call it a organization that does summer camps, summer basketball camps on college campuses. Pandemic.
Mhm.
Everything's closed. There's no camps, there's no nothing. So as quickly as I was hired was as quickly as I was, or my position was eliminated, if you will. And so yeah, I'm stuck with okay, what to do now because there's nothing, no sports, no anything. But I'm obviously seeing that with COVID, we're losing people. I mean, the numbers obviously, was insane.
Mhm.
And so it made me just kind of think, all right, Kenisha, you have been exactly where these people are, right? Maybe not in the same way, of course. I won't be, disrespectful like that, but you understand the grief, the pain of losing a loved one. And so what can you do to help? And so I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to tell my story, the full story, because up until that point, I would only tell bits and pieces, right? I would tell about being a caregiver. So I started an organization for caregivers, which was a lot of fun and very rewarding, right? I feel like caregivers are the unsung heroes. They're the ones who take their loved ones to the appointments. Sometimes they get mistreated because loved ones are frustrated and so they lash out on them. It's a lot that goes into being a caregiver. So I would host caregiver day out brunches just to give them an opportunity to be with other people and to talk and, have some fun and eat and shop. And of course, when the pandemic hit, I couldn't do those anymore. So I'm like, okay, so that part of the story, I I can't, I mean I can share, but I can't share, right? So the next part of the story is grief. And so I enrolled into a speakers program. And in that program, they ask, well, what is the one thing that you can talk about that you don't have to Google? Because I was getting caregiver questions about things that I didn't understand, like, talking about dementia. I haven't experienced that. I can empathize, but I don't know what that feels like. But I can talk about grief all day and all night, and I don't have to Google or check anybody for that.
Mhm.
And so that is when I started to be more vocal about my story and about the grief that I had experienced losing both of my parents. And so from there, it turned into okay, how can I help people? And I'm sure people, want to talk, need therapists. Obviously, I can't quite be a therapist because that requires more training, but I could be a life coach and I can help people navigate the gap in the middle between where they are and where they hope to be in spite of this grief. Because as we all know, when we're in it, we can't see the light of day, right? All we see is what's right in front of us. And we don't think that this is ever going to go away. This is the way the life is always going to be. And being on the other side, I can tell you that that is not necessarily true. I'm not saying that it is not painful. I'm not saying that the journey is not long, But I am saying that with time and with intentionality, you can still live a good life in spite of the loss. And so that is where all of this came from.
In action, taking
And
action.
action, yes, yes.
That's
I
a
had to
good,
be
yeah.
intentional in the moment. And it started as another name. It was the Grief Institute. And then I ended up kind of pivoting and changing the name simply because I one day, and I haven't started doing it yet, but I am prayerful for the day where I can, do a gala and do scholarships in my parents' honor and memory. And be able to give to students who have lost parents, but they're still trying to keep going too, right? I very much have a soft spot for those students, of course, right? And so those are the big dreams, and that's why I ended up switching it to a nonprofit so I could be able to do more work in this space and be able to help as many people as I can.
Well, in your other organization, where was it again?
Oh,
Game
Game Changer.
Changers, yeah, United. Um,
So it's
yeah.
not a sub organization. I've actually decided to keep it under Brighter Tomorrow Foundation because the mission really is the same, right? It's to support and give resources. So it's a program under Brighter Tomorrow Foundation. But what I have discovered, again, working in sports, I see a lot. I am a college professor too. So I interact with students and I get to literally be with them and talk to them and hear, when they don't show up to class, and then I find out that a cousin was shot and that's why they couldn't come because they couldn't handle it and it was a lot of pressure. It took me back to my story and my journey. So there is relatability in that space because I have walked that walk. And unfortunately, students and kids today are struggling with balance. It's a lot of pressure, and we have seen, and I have seen that students unfortunately don't feel that they have an outlet, and they too attempt suicide. Um, it has been an epidemic. However, this time, literally this time last year, while I was teaching, we found out that there was a young lady on the basketball team who committed suicide. And that felt too close to home to me. Even though I didn't have her as a student, I had one of her teammates in my class. She was a part of the women's basketball team. So, had to walk with her and encourage her in this grief. Um, it just made me realize like they're going through a lot. And I know what it feels like to be dealing with a lot and feeling like looking at left to right that nobody understands. Like I'm literally the only person on the face of of this earth that's experiencing this. And then we know that's not true. We all are dealing with things, but nobody talks about it. Or there's not a safe space to be able to talk about it. And so that is why I wanted to.
Sorry. Sorry,
That's
tickle.
okay. And so that's why I wanted to start this program for college campuses specifically, so that they can have a safe space to walk in a room and say, all right, we may not be dealing with the exact same things, but we're all attached to sports in some capacity, right? You're either a trainer, a manager, you're just a student as a future administrator, or you're an athlete. But I'm trying to maintain my grades because I've got to be eligible, but life is still happening. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. My grandmother just passed away. And so the idea is yes, I can come in and speak and give, speeches, if you will, inspirational speeches and tell my story. I host workshops in group settings so you can get hands on, tangible tools and information to be able to walk with it and take it with you as you continue on your journey. But big picture is I see just individual chapters on college campuses to where they're student led, they're peer led. Perhaps they are facilitated by future therapists, right? So they're getting the opportunity to get practicum hours by facilitating the conversations with their classmates. But these students connected to sports now have a safe space, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks, to gather with others who understand the nuances of trying to balance it all. And it came to me, well, not necessarily it came to me. I always knew I wanted to do something like this, but it was magnified when I kind of tested this in my class last year. Again, I'm a very practical, experiential professor. The book is It's all right, but I believe that students really need that real life experience. I'll give them, real scenarios that I have experienced and like, okay, write about it. Tell me how you would handle it. Like I think working in sports, it's hands on. And so, I did kind of a test, if you will, with my class and putting them in groups and found out that they actually ended up bonding over
Mm,
just this thing. Like they got to talk about what they're dealing with and going through, and it got to the point where I would start to see them come into class together. They would talk and like they became friends. They were not friends before class started, but they left as friends and as a unit, little small units, like three of them, but they left, being able to say, "Oh, I text so and so this weekend, and we chatted about what we got coming up next week, and just kind of balancing it all, and we're gonna go to the library together, and so I could see it coming together, and I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. This right here, they need to have just some sort of pod, some sort of community." To feel
mm.
as though I'm not alone. And so that is my mission right now. I still work in sports. I still do events and operations and all of the fun things that people like to clap about. It's okay. This is right here is purpose work. This is what matters most to me right now in this season.
And thank you for bringing that up, the purpose piece, because I do want to
Yeah.
talk about that because one of the things that gives you hope for the future is seeing other people
Yeah.
find purpose in their pain. Um, and one of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing for our conversation was um, I talk to a lot of grievers guests, just in the work that I do too. But like you and I found purpose in my pain.
Yeah.
But I think there's this, I was just thinking about how there's can be this pressure for grievers to find purpose in their pain. Um, like this, like it's the next thing I have to do in order to
Mhm.
feel better, right? Um, but the thought came to my mind was perhaps as we work through our grief and we're sitting in our suffering, maybe the purpose naturally evolves,
It
naturally just
does.
shows
Yeah.
up for us. But what are your thoughts for those listening who feel like they've been waiting for their purpose to be illuminated and it
Mhm.
hasn't happened for them? Because I can say for me, and I was reflecting as I was writing this question
Yeah.
out, and I was just like, well, it took me 30 years. I never thought I'd find purpose in my pain. It honestly,
Mhm.
my dad passed away. I was 8. I didn't find my purpose or really feel like I was living my purpose until, well, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 plus years,
Yeah.
35 years
Yeah.
almost. Um, so what does I think, so for people who it's maybe been 5 or 10 years and they're still like, well, what does this experience mean for me? They're still asking themselves that question.
That question.
Um, yeah, what do you want to say to that?
Yeah. And I get that. I get that question a lot too from my clients. They're like, all right, well, what does this all mean? I mean, of course, you and I, we both asked ourselves that question. What I typically share and what I have found in my own personal journey to be true is that the purpose will not be revealed until your heart is prepared for the answer. And
Mm.
I say that because you could not have told me when I closed my mother's casket that I would be doing this work. I don't care about nobody. I no. I want my mother. I want my father. So you couldn't have told me, all right, Kenisha, just it's gonna be okay because one day you're gonna help people. No, no. And
Mhm.
so I share that because sometimes we don't want to hear that, right? Especially right out the gate. We don't want to hear that. Oh, it's going to be okay. And, you're going to help a lot. No, you don't want to hear that. Life still has to move, if you will, to eventually get you to the point where your heart is soft enough to be able to understand that that was the reason, right? And we all know that everything happens for a reason. We hear that. But it's in these type of moments when you kind of put it to the wayside, but eventually it does become true that there is some sort of reason. And it may not be as grand or as big as starting a nonprofit, becoming a therapist, doing things like that. If you are able to encourage one person who is now walking in those shoes, then that could be considered purpose, right? Because you are now on the other side. You have gotten through what I like to call is the turmoil and the just the overwhelming despair, the I can't get out of bed, I can't see, day from night. Like once you get through that part of it and you're able to have a conversation and share with someone else who is now in that space, that can be considered purpose. But yeah, I honestly believe that we're not in a place to hear that there is going to be purpose to the pain and you're going to do something great with this, perhaps, until your heart is ready for that. And, for me, it was 10 years. I reached a point where I literally became exhausted with, on angel anniversaries and birthdays and holidays being depressed. I still don't like holidays. It's still just that's kind of my one soft spot where it does trigger me. I've gotten better. I think I finally did decor like 2 years ago, but I wouldn't, my husband does the Christmas tree. I refuse to do the Christmas tree because that was me and my mom's thing. So I won't
Mhm.
do that. I'll let them do that. And they know I don't really like Christmas music because that is a trigger. But I say that, once you get through kind of the overwhelming part of it, then you're eventually to a point where you can start to feel, I'm starting to feel better. And so for me, at the 10-year mark, for whatever reason, I just got tired, like physically just frustrated with being upset. And I had to stop and think, all right, what else is to this? Because I can't keep living like this. Like why? And it was really revealed to me that I needed to start celebrating that I was still here rather than focusing on that it'd been 10 years that they're not. And so having that mindset shift is what really kind of started to turn the corner of being able to find purpose, if you will, in it all. Because now I can get from the negative side of it, the hurtful and painful part of it, and start to see the brighter side, right? Brighter tomorrow. I got to
Mhm.
start to see the other side of it. And so with that came the the nuances of, just starting to do things that I would consider turning pain into purpose. So I hope that answered the question, but that
That's a good
is that
answer.
is really kind of how I see it.
No, I love that. It's a very good answer, actually. Um, what was the best advice that you ever received in your healing journey,
Mm, best advice.
or something that stuck with you that you learned, maybe even learned about yourself, maybe even that has sustained you or was the thing that kept you to put one foot in front of the other?
Um, I mean, big picture would be just wanting to make them proud. I'm still at this big age at 38. I'm still striving, if you will, to make sure that I'm making them proud. So, a lot of the moves that I make, if you will, or decisions and things that I want to do or accomplish, it's in that vein because I do believe they're my angels. I do believe that they're with me. And so the biggest thing for me is just to make sure that I am doing whatever I can to make them proud, to honor their legacy, to remember who they were, and not to forget ever, the fabric of who I am because of them. I would say from advice perspective, honestly, it's just to not sugarcoat the story. And that's what I did in the beginning. Like I said, I just not just now, but I would say within the last couple of years, I finally told the full story, like including the suicide. I believe that part out. And I have discovered that there is relatability and vulnerability. That there is somebody who needs to hear and see that it got that bad. And, gratefully, like I said, I survived it. But what are my tools and how was I able to overcome and get through it so that the next person who may feel like they're reaching that point can see that I can overcome. And so I began to tell the story, the full story, without any hesitation or reservation of judgment or anything. And I think that that has what's really helped me to help people is to share the whole thing. Obviously I filter and feel, when is it necessary. I don't go all in immediately, of course, but just listening to people, having a listening ear, and then just being able to share so that somebody else can see that no, you can get through it too. So I would say those two, just keeping an open heart of wanting to make my parents proud, even in their absence, and then just being honest and transparent, really, because you never know who's listening, who's watching, and who may be at their breaking point too.
Well, and I was thinking too a lot when you were talking with the college students and things. It's like even the college that my son goes to, there's a lot of international students.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going through something really challenging
Mm-hmm.
and they're an international student, like they're feeling quite possibly feeling really isolated.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess like, so I love your mission statement, or I love that that's part of your mission because,
Yeah.
of course, I didn't have a college student until a couple of years ago. But I've actually had, well, yeah, he's been in college now a year and a half. But I told him, I said, for the students that are from out of state or whatever, I said, see if they want to come here for a
Yeah.
visit, come get some home cooking because otherwise they're stuck,
They're
on,
literally stuck.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I just thank you for your advocacy work. I think there's really something there because I can see that there's probably a huge gap in
Yeah,
that
I mean,
area.
I've got big vision for that right there. So that's something that I would love to be able to do, for the students who can't go home for the holidays, right? Maybe we can, as an organization, can do a Thanksgiving together, or at the very least, give them a gift card to be able to eat, something like that. Obviously, I haven't thought everything through, but those are the type of things that are on my mind because as you know, playing a sport, sometimes you even have to play. Basketball season is still in. They can't go home. Maybe as a team they do something, but you got to go back to your dorm room and you're by yourself. So those type of things that you're speaking of is exactly what this is about. I'm trying in some way to eliminate isolation, to eliminate the feelings of it is just me and me only.
It's almost the flip side of, there's organizations like Adopt a Grandparent or something like that, where
Yeah.
the elderly that have no family, so
Yeah.
you can adopt
Yeah.
somebody, and
I like
check
that.
in on them and send them care
Care
packages or
packet.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my son's college does that where you can sign
Mhm.
up to send your child a care package, but it's like, okay, well, what if the kid is doesn't have their parents, right? Or
Right.
parent isn't involved in their life really, or
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, anyway, I think there's a lot you can do there. I'm cheering you on.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is there Let me ask you this final question.
Hmm.
What has your grief taught you?
Mm. Ooh, I don't think I've ever been asked that. Who? What has my grief taught me? Patience for one, because everything takes time. And as much as I would love to rush the process, get through it, get to the other side, there is something to be learned along the way. Um, I have much compassion and empathy for people who are experiencing it. I also have less of a tolerance for people who mistreat their parents. And, I get it. We're in an age where there's boundaries and all of those kind of things. But, at the end of the day, I am one of the ones that will say, but they're still here. I wish I could. And so, I understand relationships are not always perfect. Um, but, I definitely advocate for try to have healthy relationships with your family. Try to see them because you know not the day or the hour that they will be gone and there is no going back. So, like I said, as patience on one side, um, you know, advocacy on the other side for, mending relationships and things. And then I would just say, just loving on people, really. I'm sharing these stories with my daughter. She obviously never met my parents. I do the best that I can to keep their legacy alive. I think, no, it was this year. My stepmother found old um, videos, and that was a lot to endure, but yeah, there's a company that will convert old home videos into digital format, and I was actually able to see and hear my dad's voice for the first time in 25 years, and that was wild. I still haven't watched all of them yet, but just keep memories alive, as best as you can, as much as you can. um, yeah, I think those are kind of the biggest things that it's taught me.
Is there anything that you would like to share that you didn't feel you got to?
Um, I think I won't say I didn't share it, but I kind of drove over it, if you will, that in spite of what it feels like and in spite of what it looks like at this moment, I promise you can and you will get through the pain of the loss and still live a good life. I know at times it doesn't seem like that. At times, you may feel like your head is barely above water, but trust and believe that as long as you hold on to the memories, of course, but also love yourself enough to know that you're still here. That means you still have purpose. That means you still have something to contribute to this big old world that we're in. And so your loved one that you're missing is cheering you on, and they want you to go and do and be this best person that you can until you get to see them again. And so I just want to remind whomever may be listening or watching this that life is to be lived, not merely just surviving. You can have all these big goals and dreams, and that's fine. But also remember that you deserve to have purpose. You deserve to smile. You deserve to have good days, even in spite of the loss. And triggers may come and memories may come up and bring up feelings, but just know that, you deserve to live. You deserve to have a good life in spite of the loss.
It's a beautiful way to wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And where can people find you if they'd like to connect and learn more about your work?
Yes. So I am on Instagram, and my website is both Kenisha Nichelle. That's N as in Nancy, not Michelle, but Nichelle. Yeah,
All right. I will link to that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your
not a
story.
problem. Thank you. Grateful to do it.
And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.